Good morning. This is Dawn here for the Diamond Dimensions series, which we are doing from April 1st through the 12th. This series is all about 12 facets of change and how we will be changed forever in the passage of the next 7 years, the period of 2020 to 2027. These 12 patterns of potential are our gateways to our collective soul story and to collective transformation. They support the creation of a new society and help us to find a whole new way forward in this new era rich in love. So we have looked at the Star of Wonder, the 5 wheels within a wheel, and then we have begun to look at the 7 years of change, which include 7 gateways of transformation and 7 wonders of the soul. Today we are looking at the gateway of truth and the 7 wonders of the soul. We're looking at healing, which is the fourth of the 7 wonders. Faith, hope, love have been the foundational ones, and now we're moving into healing. And this is going to be a collective transformation around the year of 2023. And yet this is always occurring. It's occurring now, and it occurs at the end of it occurs at the individual level and also the collective level. So today we're talking about the gate of truth. Keywords for the gate of truth are soul, synthesis, and synchronicity. So what will this look like? Also the C symbol today, you can see on the screen there, is the flower of restoration linked to the wonder of healing. So 2023 is going to be an invitation to the radical reclamation of healing, one of the 7 wonders of the soul. And this collective passage is about stepping into the radiant realization of who we are, individually and collectively, by acknowledging and resting in truth as a path to freedom and the restoration of a whole society. Key questions. How will we turn from the terrors we have inflicted on one another and live in truth in our own lives, in our closest relationships, in community, and then with and for the whole of humanity? And the second question is, how will we place ourselves in the center of the flower of restoration and allow the patterns of thriving to ripple out from our intention to live with integrity? So true healing is cultivated through a restoration of the soul, through synthesis, and through careful observance of the intelligent synchronicities that tell us when something is out of alignment. So there's this idea of listening and receiving and receptors. We are one body, and we must find our way back to the healing of the whole. Today's flower of restoration C symbol is suggestive of the kinds of sustainable systems and structures that will best serve our society and lead us to a flourishing humanity. So such systems and structures have the following characteristics that are suggested by today's C symbol, the flower of restoration. First, there is from that center, so look at the center here of the flower of restoration, and from the center there is the infusion of life-giving nourishment that is drawn from the endless pools of soul, the endless pools of the soul of humanity, and from an eternal fountain of healing. And in fact, all of the 7 wonders, faith, hope, love, healing, growth, passion, and beauty, that is what is at the very center of the systems and structures that we could co-create as we move forward. And so this life-giving nourishment and the endless pools of soul is at the center of every thriving system that supports a thriving life for all. Also, throughout the system, there is the full acceptance of and adherence to a way of being that places the highest priority on guarding the soul of society and the soul of the system as it pertains to aligned service to society. And that happens through truth and transparency. So just in general, when I look at this C symbol, I see all these little dots, these little lights. It reminds me of what was that Bush Sr. used to talk about, 1,000 points of light. It reminds me of that saying, but in a much more healthy way. And so there is this idea of every participant in the system and every idea within the system that is brought to life being a light to humanity. And that light is only made possible through truth and transparency, through adherence and coherence, and through this infusion of life-giving nourishment that comes from the very core of the system. So once again, we're seeing that that's been consistent through all of these, excuse me, all of these C symbols that are representative of the 7 gates in the 7 years. So there's a return to, or maybe for the first time, a high valuing of truth that leads to freedom and supports healing and restoration within a system, and that is also that is indicative of every action taken by the system, and that supports life-giving nourishment to any of those served by the system. Let's look at the core here again. That inner circle there of dots, those are representative to me of the guardians of a system. And that can take a lot of different forms, so don't get caught up in what that looks like for the sake of our conversation. But those guardians within each system ensure open channels and rivers of life throughout the system that allow that life-giving nourishment to reach every single area, and to for every single idea and service area within a system to be immersed in that river of life, in the life-giving nourishment that is drawn from the endless pools of the soul of humanity. So that eternal fountain is everything is immersed in that. And then, so the guardians at the core there are tasked with ensuring these open channels, and that flow is maintained around the membrane of the structure or system, as well as throughout its body, with the dedication of common spaces for replenishment and spiritual nourishing for all who do dedicate themselves to the common vision and values of a system or structure. So there's the ensuring of adequate spaciousness for the system to thrive. And I think that it's quite clear if you look at some of the systems that are, in a state of demise and decay and deconstruction today. Part of the reason is that there's been no room to breathe. And so there is room to breathe in the systems that we will co-create. And there are guardians who ensure that is maintained, that the primary value is one that ensures spaciousness and a gracious service to society by valuing that spaciousness within, and then therefore it can be replicated and shared throughout society. So these are like safe sanctuary spaces where those that are served by a system can also find respite and be restored to full thriving through the nourishment of that system's services. And this happens in a manner that is consistent with wholehearted service and the vision of whole life thriving for all. All of those, it doesn't matter if you're internal to that system or served by that system or just a member of society at large. That value is consistent throughout all the systems that will thrive in the years to come. This C symbol also suggests to me an understanding that each representative of the system, each of these little dots, each of those representatives of the system is a carrier of the light, life, and love that is at the core of every human life. And each member of the system, each representative of the system, is also responsible first and foremost for being an embodiment of this truth within themselves and for restoring the flame of truth and freedom in individuals and groups who may have become disconnected from it. Now imagine that if every system was comprised of where every member of every system took that responsibility seriously and was understood that they were fully empowered to be that light. That was their primary task. What would that look like? How would that light up this world? So I really feel that this C symbol in particular is a strong reminder of that. And it's interesting to me that this is the symbol that is associated with healing, because one would think, when we think of healing, we almost think of a body that's weak and tired and doesn't have the capacity for that. And the opposite is being conveyed by the C symbol to me. That yes, by their valuing of restoration within the system, they are actually able to be a brighter light, and that is never extinguished. And so that's super exciting to me, this idea of the light of humanity being represented by all in a variety of ways, but that is the primary function of every member of every societal system. Sorry. So looking at the C symbol, there is also, in that spaciousness that's created within the petals of the system here, there's the idea that there's room for consideration and for the seed of innovation to spring forth within each functional area of the system. And there's encouragement and support for creative solutions and integrated approaches that prioritize wholeness for individuals and groups that may be the beneficiaries of that system's service to society. So the idea of spaciousness is really one of the top things that I see in this particular C symbol. There's also the idea of cohesiveness and coordination within each functional area of a system. And it's interesting, this one, more than the other C symbols, really has this sort of idea of even distribution, maybe of responsibility, maybe of ideas. So that's just interesting to me, the shape and form of the petals and the patterns of potential, is really a strong idea conveyed through this C symbol. There's the idea also to me of lightness and agility, and as has been in many of the C symbols, and in this one in particular, there's the concept of the balance of momentum and future-facing forward movement, the balance of that with a manageable pace of change. So there's sort of a measured feeling to this C symbol, more so than some of the others, where there's more of a quick responsiveness type idea. So the pace of change and balance will be super important in the years to come, and as we pass through the gate of truth into the soul wonder of healing. Healing, by the way, I want to say, is we limit the definition of that often, and the understanding of healing as we're discussing it here is much broader. It's about health and wellness and wholeheartedness and whole life thriving. The C symbol, the flower of restoration, also suggests a valuing of and a respect for synchronicities and timing in terms of delivery of services, in terms of evaluation of processes and best practices. So again, there's these little lights, these dots are reminiscent to me of timing, almost like musical in its quality, and the importance of listening and responding, and for noticing patterns of potential, for seeing the synchronicities and the opportunities to learn from what is occurring in the environment around us, in the internal environment of the system, all of that. Let's go back to the center for a second. The core leadership at the heart of the system's organizational structure is committed to a path of flourishing throughout the system or structure and dedicated to the sustainability of the system for its vital service to society, not merely for self-preservation. Because I think we've seen, plenty of examples where the core leadership is indeed paying attention to sustainability, or what they see as sustainability, which is not true sustainability, but it's for self-preservation. It's for the enrichment, essentially, of those within a system, regardless of the structure of that system or the label that's put upon it. It can very well be a government system supposedly helping all. It could very well be a not-for-profit organization, and yet there is corruption in those systems because the attention to self sustaining practices is for the cause of self-preservation rather than placing vital service to society at the forefront and creating sustainable systems that are sustainable for their true purpose, for the true vision that supposedly leads these structures. So that needs to be cleaned up. And this C symbol, the flower of restoration, is very symbolic of that to me, that core leadership at the very inner circle there, being tasked with and committed to a path of full flourishing. These guardians are also entrusted with the health of the system, and they are the ones who are tasked with ensuring a synthesis of shared knowledge throughout the system. Again, that's a common flaw in many of our existing systems, is there's not a synthesis, there's not shared knowledge, there's not the, as a matter of fact, there is a sickness within many systems where there's a withholding of truth from one area or many areas, and it's that truth is held exclusively by a few, and it absolutely leads to deterioration and decay. It can't do anything else, and we can look to nature to see examples of that. So there's much more to be explored with this particular topic, but I'm just giving you kind of the highlights. So in addition to the guardians who are entrusted with this synthesis of shared knowledge, equally, each participant within the system, all these tiny little dots, has a individual responsibility for adhering to and voicing truth through this kind of level of personal responsibility and accountability that begins with the embodiment of essential qualities for thriving in their own life and work. And they bring that forward consistently, and that is each participant within a system's responsibility. And because that's like their own passage through their individual gate of truth into this idea of healing, integration, wholeness as a way of being. And so now this speaks to empowerment, and how this will happen, I cannot say, but I do know that it is essential, and that it's related to the 33 essential qualities for thriving together that I share in the Birds of a Feather journey on my website, lifedailywithdawn.com. in the Life Path Online Learning Center. And these essential qualities for thriving are something that each of us in the years to come will have to really get a handle of. There's work to be done individually, because systems cannot thrive until individuals who are participants within that system thrive. And so this C symbol, more than the others, speaks to that the imperative of the individual participant in and contributor to a system taking full responsibility for their individual contributions and the way that they are being in society and within that system. At the core, you'll see there's a second layer of the stamen-like white figures there that are representative to me of an additional layer of leadership or representation that again exists at the core of the system, but is not directly tied to that core leadership group. And this represents to me a layer of leadership that is also responsible for this sustainability of the organization or the structure or the system, and also responsible for the highest possible fulfillment of the system's service to society in ways that most support full thriving for those served by the system. So this layer of leadership, these representational leaders, are responsible for listening to and learning from society as a whole. They're responsible for ensuring the system remains open and connected to the larger fabric of society, broadly defined. And they're responsible for sharing with others outside of the system the wealth of wisdom and truths gleaned from within that system, to include best practices, to include best practices for restorative health for the participants within a system, to include best practices for restoring health within segments of society that are served by the system, or just in general to maintaining that connection to other systems throughout society and to society as a whole, and to bringing that to sort of being the bridge to bringing what is learned from society as a whole and from other systems into this system or structure, and also for sharing, again, what is learned. So they're conduits, they're a bridge between the individual system and its service to society and other systems and other ways of serving society that maybe are not rooted in a systems approach, if that makes any sense. So this flower of restoration as one dimension of change, one facet of how we will be changed and how we will bring forward new solutions, innovative solutions and ideas for life and full thriving of all. This flower of restoration and the wonder of healing can be something that leads us forward into a new society and into a new era rich in love.